America's next recession isn't coming. It's already here. While Washington insists the economy is resilient, debt is exploding, foreclosures are accelerating, and entire state budgets are running on fumes. Moody's warns nearly one-third of U.S. GDP is already in recession territory. Pension funds are drying up, credit ratings are falling, and families are fleeing by the hundreds of thousands. The American dream has turned into a countdown clock. This isn't a forecast. It's already happening. These are the 12 states collapsing first as the U.S. slides into its most dangerous downturn in decades. Number 12. Colorado. Colorado, once the poster child of booming tech and mountain prosperity, now hides an economy built on fragile foundations. Beneath the scenic skylines of Denver and Boulder, cracks are widening fast. The state's median home price still hovers near $570,000, while the median household income sits at just $92,000. That means the average Coloradan would need to spend nearly 46% of take-home pay just to afford a basic mortgage. Unemployment is climbing, 4.3% statewide, the highest since early 2021, driven by mass tech layoffs. In 2024 alone, more than 11,000 jobs vanished from major players like Google, Zoom, and Salesforce, which had overexpanded during the pandemic boom. Office vacancies in downtown Denver have surged past 31%, the highest in state history, with landlords offering up to 40% rent cuts just to keep tenants. Commercial property valuations have already dropped 25% from 2022 peaks, and delinquency rates on business loans doubled in a single year. Colorado's state budget paints the same bleak picture. A $1.6 billion shortfall looms for 2026, largely because income tax collections are falling, while public sector pension obligations balloon. The Public Employees Retirement Association, PERA, now carries $35 billion in unfunded liabilities, a ticking fiscal bomb. Even tourism, along the state's safety net, is softening. Visitor spending in 2024 fell 7%, while ski resort traffic declined 10% due to fewer international travelers and record lodging costs. Rural regions like Pueblo and Mesa County have foreclosure rates approaching 1 in 310 homes, ranking among the highest in the Mountain West. In short, Colorado's boom-time glow is masking a dangerous convergence: an overheated housing market, weakening job base, and collapsing commercial demand. When the recession deepens, the Centennial State's mountain of debt and inflated property values could tumble like a snowpack breaking loose, fast, loud, and unstoppable. Number 11. Mississippi. Mississippi has long been America's poorest state, but 2025 may be the year its fragile economy finally collapses. The state's median household income is only $49,111, barely 60% of the national average, while poverty grips 18.1% of residents. That's nearly 1 in 5 Mississippians living below the poverty line. Unemployment has crept to 5.2%, and labor force participation stands at 55.6%, the lowest in the nation. The state depends heavily on Washington to stay afloat. 46% of Mississippi's entire budget comes from federal aid. With looming federal spending cuts and a recession ahead, those lifelines could shrink fast, creating a domino effect that devastates local governments, schools, and hospitals. The housing market shows alarming signs. Median home values are around $176,000, but rising mortgage rates and wage stagnation have frozen buyers. Foreclosure filings have surged 32% year-over-year, particularly in Jackson and Greenville. The latter faces the sharpest housing price decline forecast in the U.S., down 16.6% by mid-2025. Meanwhile, commercial vacancies in smaller cities have jumped 18%, and small retailers are vanishing as consumer credit card debt hits record highs. Infrastructure adds another layer of crisis. Nearly 28% of Mississippi's bridges are structurally deficient, and state debt per taxpayer is approaching $7,800. Healthcare is collapsing. 6 rural hospitals have closed since 2020, leaving over 300,000 residents without nearby emergency care. Mississippi's deep poverty, low education attainment, and lack of economic diversification leave it utterly exposed to the coming downturn. When federal aid dries up and inflation continues to eat away at fragile household budgets, Mississippi's small towns could experience a Great Depression of their own. Not a short-term recession, but a systemic unraveling. Number 10. Maryland. Maryland's economy has long leaned on Washington, D.C., and that dependency is now its greatest weakness. The state faces a dangerous mix of high living costs, slowing job growth, and vulnerability to federal spending cuts. More than 28,700 federal jobs sit within Maryland's borders, the highest exposure ratio in the nation. When Congress freezes budgets or trims agencies, those paychecks vanish, and so do the taxes that sustain the state's fragile balance sheet. Moody's already downgraded Maryland's credit outlook in 2025, citing its over-reliance on federal activity. Median home prices hover near $430,000, but median household income of $98,400 can no longer keep up with inflation, surging property taxes, and 7% average mortgage rates. Foreclosures are up 29% since 2023, and Baltimore alone holds over 95 REO, bank-owned properties, one of the highest concentrations nationwide. Commercial property is also faltering. Office vacancies in the Baltimore metro now exceed 22%, while rents have fallen below $19 per square foot, their lowest level in a decade. The once thriving biotech corridor in Montgomery County is shedding jobs as venture capital funding shrinks 40% year over year. Maryland's budget outlook is deteriorating. A $700 million shortfall is projected for 2026, while pension liabilities climb toward $25 billion. The state's rainy day fund, just $2.9 billion, could evaporate in under a year if a deep recession hits. The irony is brutal. The state with one of the highest education levels in America may be one of the first to face a post-federal economic shock. As Washington tightens its belt, Maryland's economy, tethered to federal money, is set to unravel, exposing just how hollow its prosperity really is. Number 9. Delaware. Delaware, home to just over 1 million residents, has quietly become one of the most financially fragile states in the country. Its economy, heavily dependent on corporate registrations, chemical manufacturing, and banking, is shrinking under pressure from falling profits and declining federal transfers. Corporate tax receipts, which fund nearly 30% of Delaware's budget, dropped 14% in 2024, the largest decline in 2 decades. As more companies incorporate in tax-friendly states like Texas and Florida, Delaware's business haven model is eroding fast. The state's 2025 budget deficit is projected at $1.1 billion, or roughly $1,050 per resident. Households aren't faring better. The median home price sits around $370,000, while median household income is $76,000, a widening gap that pushes debt-to-income ratios to unsustainable levels. Home affordability has collapsed. It now takes 38% of monthly income to service a typical mortgage. Meanwhile, foreclosure filings jumped 27% year over year, especially in New Castle County and Dover. Unemployment rose to 4.6%, and job creation in key sectors like finance and manufacturing fell 11% in the past year. Inflation remains sticky, with grocery and energy costs up over 6% annually. Delaware's state pension system, with $8.4 billion in obligations, is just 65% funded, while local governments face growing shortfalls in teacher and police pensions. Even its small size magnifies risk. When one major employer downsizes, entire counties feel the shock. Credit card delinquency rates have reached 6.3%, among the highest in the Mid-Atlantic. Delaware's image as a quiet, stable corporate state is crumbling under economic stress. As revenue falls, pensions underfund, and costs spike, the first state could become one of the first to fall when America's next recession wave hits full force. Number 8. Alaska. Alaska's economy has always run on oil, but when crude prices fall, the entire state trembles. In 2025, Alaska's dependency on petroleum revenue, which funds nearly 40% of its operating budget, has become its greatest liability. The state's per-barrel break-even is $76, Yet oil has hovered near $71 for months, forcing Juneau to burn through reserves at record speed. The state's budget shortfall stands at $1.2 billion, and the permanent fund, once Alaska's pride, is now being raided just to cover payroll. Meanwhile, federal funds account for another 40% of total spending, a dangerous ratio if Washington enacts cuts during a nationwide recession. Population decline is accelerating. Alaska has lost over 12,000 residents annually for 3 consecutive years as workers flee to the lower 48 for better wages and lower costs. The median home price in Anchorage remains high at $394,000, while the median household income is $86,300, creating affordability gaps despite outward migration. Energy jobs are evaporating. The oil and gas sector employed nearly 13,500 workers a decade ago, but now supports barely 8,900. Tourism, the state's second pillar, dropped 9% in 2024, with cruise passenger traffic still below pre-pandemic levels. Even the real estate market is stalling. Home sales fell 18% year over year, and inventory has ballooned 32% as more residents list properties to leave. Rural areas face unemployment exceeding 8%, and grocery prices are staggering. Milk at $7.50 a gallon, bread over $6 in some regions. Alaska's famed independence is proving unsustainable in a global slowdown. With shrinking oil royalties, depopulation, and no diversified industry to fill the void, the last frontier may soon resemble a modern economic ghost. Vast, beautiful, and eerily empty. Number 7. New Mexico. New Mexico sits at the crossroads of government dependency and energy risk, a fatal combination in a recession. Nearly 43% of the state's budget comes from federal funding, while another 30% of GDP relies on oil and gas. When both sectors wobble, collapse becomes inevitable. Over 22,000 federal employees in New Mexico are exposed to layoffs or pay freezes. Budget analysts warn that even a 10% cut in federal contracts could wipe out 3% of the state's GDP overnight. Meanwhile, the oil market swings have shredded fiscal stability. In 2024, revenue from oil royalties fell 18%, forcing Santa Fe to project a $900 million deficit for 2026. The housing market, once a quiet refuge, is unraveling fast. Albuquerque's median home price of $327,000 has fallen 9% since 2023, while inventory surged 24.7%. Foreclosure filings have doubled within a year, and mortgage delinquency now sits at 4.8%, among the highest in the Southwest. New Mexico's poverty rate is 18.4%, and median household income of $61,000 can't keep pace with rising rents and grocery costs. Employment growth stalled at 0.4%, while youth unemployment exceeds 9%. Violent crime rates, already 70% above national average, are further deterring new investment. Even the public pension system is deteriorating, carrying $14.6 billion in unfunded obligations, just 62% funded. Tourism, film production, and manufacturing, the state's diversification hopes, all shrank in 2024 amid weaker consumer demand. With collapsing oil revenue, federal dependence, and a rising cost of living, New Mexico stands exposed to every shockwave of a national recession. What was once a hidden gem for investors is fast becoming one of America's most fragile economies, sustained by subsidies and hope rather than growth. Number 6. Nevada. Nevada's post-pandemic boom is officially over. The Silver State, built on entertainment, construction, and speculation, now faces the fastest economic cooldown in America. Foreclosure filings reached 1 in every 326 homes, the highest in the nation, while unemployment climbed to 5.4%, up from 3.9% just a year ago. Las Vegas, once the symbol of endless growth, now leads in property distress. Inventory exploded 44.8% year over year, marking the steepest increase in 12 consecutive months. Median home prices fell 2.2%, but insiders warn another 10 to 12%. Decline is likely as tourism softens and job losses rise. The state's dependency on volatile revenue streams is brutal. Gaming taxes fund 42% of Nevada's general budget, and casino revenues are down 8% compared to 2022. Commercial real estate tells an even darker story. Office vacancies have reached 24%, while loan delinquencies jumped 38% year over year. Las Vegas households are drowning in debt. The average mortgage payment now tops $2,780 per month, while the median household income sits at $78,000, meaning over 43% of take-home pay goes toward housing. Credit card delinquency rates hit 5.9%, a record high for the state. Even tourism, Nevada's lifeblood, is faltering. Visitor numbers are down 7%, and convention bookings dropped 15% as companies cut travel budgets. Construction jobs have declined 12%, and Clark County now reports over 14,000 vacant homes awaiting sale or foreclosure. Statewide tax revenue fell 6.3% in 2024, prompting warnings of a $1 billion shortfall by 2026. The mirage of prosperity is evaporating, revealing an economy stretched thin by debt, speculation, and dependence on luck. Nevada's fall won't be a quiet one. It'll be fast, visible, and painful, as America's playground becomes one of its first economic casualties. Number 5. Louisiana. Louisiana's economy has been treading water for decades, and now the tide is turning against it completely. With 50% of the state's budget funded by federal dollars and 19% of residents in poverty, Louisiana is one of America's most economically fragile states. The median household income is just $56,000, while the cost of essentials like rent, insurance, and utilities has climbed 14% in a single year. New Orleans, once a symbol of resilience, now ranks as the worst-performing housing market in the United States. Home prices fell 7.1% year over year, with further declines of 5.8% projected by mid-2025. The median price in Orleans Parish is down to $245,000, while average days on market have soared from 41 to 74 days. Foreclosure filings rose 34% statewide, and 1 in every 402 homes is now in distress. The state's oil and gas sector, historically its lifeline, faces growing instability. Energy employment has dropped 11% since 2022, while federal environmental regulations and volatile crude prices continue to choke investment. Meanwhile, insurance premiums have become unbearable. Hurricane-related claims from storms like Ida and Laura cost over $20 billion, forcing multiple insurers to pull out. Commercial real estate is also collapsing. Baton Rouge and Shreveport office vacancies stand at 23% and 25%, respectively. Retail space vacancies hit 11%, a 20-year high. Louisiana's public pension system carries $18.9 billion in unfunded liabilities, and the 2026 fiscal deficit is expected to exceed $1.3 billion. In short, Louisiana faces a storm with no levee high enough, a mixture of climate risk, economic stagnation, and political dysfunction. Once the heartbeat of the Gulf, it's now on the verge of becoming the first state in the Deep South to experience true financial insolvency. Number 4. Florida. Florida's boom turned into a ticking bomb. After 3 straight years of explosive migration and record home building, the cracks are now visible across every corner of the state. Florida currently has 9 of the 15 most overvalued housing markets in America. Cities like Tampa, plus 42%, Cape Coral, plus 37%, and Northport, plus 40%, are all dangerously inflated. The median home price statewide is $417,000, but the median household income is just $67,917, meaning the average family would need to earn nearly $120,000 to afford a typical mortgage at 7% interest. Foreclosure rates are exploding. 1 in every 242 homes is in default, ranking Florida second worst in the nation. Lakeland alone sees 1 in 172 homes under foreclosure, the highest rate in America. Insurance is the next disaster. Hurricane Ian caused $112.9 billion in damages, and insurance premiums have risen over 45% since 2022. Homeowners are paying an average of $6,000 per year, triple the national average. Major insurers like Farmers and AAA have already exited the state, leaving millions scrambling for coverage. The rental market is also deteriorating. Vacancy rates have surged to 10%, and HOA fees are up 15% year over year. Incomes can't keep up. Florida's job growth slowed to 0.8%, while inflation still runs at 4.2%. Tourism revenue is down 6%, and the hospitality sector lost 18,000 jobs in 2024. Despite its demographic strength, Florida is walking into a perfect storm: overvalued real estate, collapsing insurance, and slowing migration. Investors who bought at the top of the market in 2022 may now face 30 to 40% losses. The Sunshine State's boom has turned into a mirage of affordability and stability that's fading fast. Number 3. California. California's economy, once the fifth largest in the world, is now crumbling under the weight of its own excess. The state faces a record $58 billion budget deficit, the largest in its history, and is pulling $12 billion from reserves just to keep operations running. The median home price sits at a staggering $825,000, requiring an income of $237,000 to buy, while the actual median household income is just $96,500. That means the average Californian household earns less than half of what's needed for a median home. Monthly mortgage payments now average $5,900, consuming 36% of income, the highest ratio in the nation. Unemployment sits at 5.5%, with 239,000 residents leaving the state in 2024 alone, the biggest domestic migration loss in America. Meanwhile, California carries $244.9 billion in unfunded pension liabilities and $20 billion in unemployment debt. The public education system faces $5 billion in funding gaps, and tax revenues from Silicon Valley have plunged 21% as tech profits collapse. Commercial real estate is collapsing at unprecedented speed. San Francisco's office vacancy hit 28.8%, Los Angeles is 22%, and statewide commercial foreclosures now exceed 187 per month, nearly 30% of the national total. The iconic LA gas company tower, once valued at $632 million, now faces foreclosure at $200 million. Homelessness surged past 181,000 people, while median rent in Los Angeles hit $2,950. Energy costs are 42% above the national average, and utility bills rose another 11% in 2024. California's mix of fiscal mismanagement, overregulation, and housing insanity has turned the Golden State into a warning sign. Its economy is still vast, but like its cliffs, it's eroding fast, one collapse at a time. Number 2. Illinois. Illinois isn't just broke, it's structurally broken. Decades of corruption, reckless spending, and pension abuse have turned the state into a living case study in economic decay. The numbers are terrifying. Every Illinois taxpayer effectively owes $38,800 just to cover existing debt. The state faces $172.8 billion in unfunded obligations, ranking it 48th in the nation for fiscal health, just above New Jersey and Connecticut. The 2026 budget deficit is projected between $3.2 and $5.1 billion, even under optimistic growth forecasts. The teachers' retirement system, once considered the backbone of Illinois' public workforce, is now just 34% funded and could run dry within 2 decades. That means tens of thousands of retired educators depend on a system that mathematically cannot sustain them. Chicago, the state's economic engine, is collapsing under similar pressure. Property taxes have risen 16% since 2021, while violent crime is up 34% in 5 years. Businesses are fleeing downtown, and office vacancy rates have hit 18.8%, with rents plunging to $27.30 per square foot, down from $34 pre-pandemic. Nearly 1,976 bank-owned REO properties sit idle across the metro area, the highest number in the nation. The state's population continues to shrink. Illinois lost 84,000 residents in 2024 alone, marking the 9th straight year of population decline. With every departure, tax revenues fall further, worsening the debt spiral. Electricity costs are 18% above the national average, and inflation-adjusted incomes have stagnated since 2019. The tragedy is that Illinois has no easy fix. Raising taxes drives more people away. Cutting spending risks defaulting on promises already made. The result? A fiscal time bomb waiting to detonate. When the next recession tightens credit markets, Illinois may become the first major state since the Great Depression to openly discuss insolvency, a collapse not of politics, but of mathematics. Number 1. New Jersey. New Jersey's crisis is unlike any other because it's already running out of time. State auditors warn that New Jersey has just 2 days of operating reserves, the lowest cushion of any U.S. state. Each taxpayer effectively owes $44,500 to keep the lights on, while total unfunded liabilities now exceed $220 billion. The Teachers' Pension Fund, the largest in the state, is only 34.7% funded, the weakest of any major pension plan in America. Despite years of tax hikes, the debt continues to snowball. The 2026 fiscal outlook projects a $5.3 billion deficit, and even the state's vaunted rainy day fund could vanish in a single quarter if revenues dip just 5%. Housing adds another layer of fragility. New Jersey has the second highest foreclosure rate in the nation, 1 in every 359 homes. In Atlantic City, it's a shocking 1 in 200 homes. The state's median home price climbed 19% year over year to $539,000, creating a textbook bubble even as inventory swells and mortgage rates hover near 7%. Office vacancies in the Newark-Jersey City corridor exceed 19.4%, with 42 foreclosures monthly in the commercial sector alone. Taxes are suffocating residents. Property taxes now average $9,800 per household per year, the highest in the United States. Energy costs are 33% above the national average, and insurance premiums jumped 12% in 2024. Despite these costs, state GDP grew just 0.7%, far below the national average. New Jersey's economy has become the ultimate paradox. High incomes, but even higher obligations. Residents earn more but keep less. Small businesses drown under regulation, and infrastructure spending barely scratches the surface of its decaying roads and rail lines. In short, the Garden State is broke, overtaxed, and out of options. When recession pressure hits full force, New Jersey won't just face a budget crisis. It'll face an existential one. A fiscal implosion 2 decades in the making is finally at the doorstep.